All right, I am back for one more tonight. So, want to talk about this blood moon total lunar eclipse. It's going to take place for us here on the Atlantic coast of the United States of America. It's going to take place just before 7 a.m., Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026. So, what's all this about, right? So, this is about new beginnings. So before I ramble too much, let's sum this up. This is about new beginnings in leadership. And these new beginnings are going to come about through decapitation of leadership. Um, we've had a little bit of this literally in the last couple of days, but then figuratively too. Um, and it's not necessarily, people holding offices, but it's about our perception of, people whose asses we may have kissed in the past, leaders whose asses we may have kissed. We may have been all impressed with them. Oh, they went to Harvard University and Georgetown and Princeton. The houses is so beautiful, and they have an amazing retirement account. It's like we get all fucking starry-eyed, and I swear, especially like middle class people, they get like sexually aroused by like diplomas and like retirement plans and shit. Um, but yeah, just decapitation of leadership. This has been going on for a long time. It's like one thing that's been going on is Uranus has been like transiting over a star called Algol, which in sidereal astrology, which what I primarily use, it's in the low degrees of Taurus. It's at about 2 degrees Taurus. And Algol is the head of Medusa. So it's been going back and forth. It's been transiting, retrograding, retransiting, re-retrograding. And, Algol can deal with decapitation of leadership. So, a blood moon. So blood moons are interesting. Blood moon, it's type of a full moon. It has a ruddy hue. Blood moons are all about endings and new beginnings, emotional releases. What was the other term I wrote down? Profound transformation, death of the old way. We've been due for that. Politicians love to use this whole change thing. They don't tell you what the change is going to be, but they're like, I'm all about change. Let's have some change. What do you say? You want to have some change? And they don't tell you what it is. And what you do is you project whatever your change fantasy is onto what they're saying. So it's it's kind of feeble-minded, honestly, to take these people at face value and think that they think like you and they're just like you. So yeah. So this blood moon total lunar eclipse. It's all about focusing on leadership, specifically the end of old ways, emotional release, endings, new beginnings, profound change, all that stuff. So when you have eclipses, what you have is you have either the sun or the moon, whether it's a solar or lunar eclipse, they get swallowed by the shadows of the moon, which we call the dragon's head and the dragon's tail. So these are effectively portals. These are basically the portals that bring your soul in and out of this world. And they do this in general. They bring things in and out of this world. So, these portals where you come in and out of this world, they're called the Golden Gate and the Silver Gate. That's why in California and San Francisco, we have a Golden Gate Bridge, because that thing was named by a bunch of well-to-do, powerful, influential Freemasons. And, San Francisco, that's the land of the setting sun out there. And the setting sun symbolizes, death and rebirth. It's the death that brings the rebirth. So anyway, that's what this eclipse is all about. That. So eclipses, the sun and the moon get swallowed up by either the dragon's head or the dragon's tail. And so in this case, we're talking about a lunar eclipse. Lunar eclipse on a personal level, it deals with your mental and emotional well-being. It deals with your emotional intuitive consciousness. It also deals with your physical well-being to some extent, but it's your intuition and it's your emotional self. Now, on mass scales, when you're dealing with communities and provinces and countries and the world itself, entire regions, it deals with the emotional state of the people. And so when we look further into this, so the moon in a few hours when we have this full moon, and so lunar eclipses always take place on full moons, because a full moon is when you have sun and moon in opposite sides of the sky, and the moon is fully reflecting the sun. So really a full moon, it's a very solar phenomenon, because it's when the moon is reflecting the sun, reflecting the light of the sun to the earth at night at its maximum capacity. So it's kind of an interesting thing from like folklore and, fiction and horror and all that stuff. Werewolves are actually solar creatures. They're creatures of the night, but their transformation is catalyzed, activated by the sun, by the sun's presence at night. In full moons, they cause emotional reactions in people. You ask any policeman, fireman, emergency room worker, they all see it. They see it every single month during a full moon. There's more drug abuse, more drinking, more violence, more accidents, more emotional flare-ups. Because the moon runs our hormonal systems in our body. It's locked to the tides. There's like the tidal lock, so it runs the tidal cycle in the Earth's oceans and lakes, bodies of water. So the moon's a big deal. The surface of the Earth would not be habitable without it. It's pretty amazing. So the environment would just be too harsh without the moon regulating it. So it's pretty amazing. So yeah. So lunar eclipse, it's an opposition between sun and moon, opposite sides of the sky. And then the sun and moon are also conjunct the two portals. So the dragon's head and the dragon's tail, aka Rahu and Ketu. So in this case, the moon, the shadow being cast across the moon in this lunar eclipse is Ketu. Ketu is, a pop culture way of looking at Ketu and conceptualizing Ketu as the headless horseman. Ketu is the serpent without the body, or it's like a humanoid. It's the serpent without a head, or it's like a person without a head. So Ketu is the portal that our souls use to exit this reality when we're done living here on Earth. Ketu, in your personal astrology chart, I do astrology readings. If you're curious about kind of, how you tick and how your life ticks, I'm happy to help you. But anyway, here's my sales plug. So yeah, Ketu, even where it sits in your astrology chart, it basically takes things away from you, things that you're done with, old things that you don't need to focus on anymore. So in this case, and Ketu is a revealer. So Rahu is like, the master of mystery and illusions and, delusions and bullshit, total bullshit artist. Ketu is just all about transparency and telling the truth and Rahu will reveal things and make like a game out of it because Rahu's a trickster. But K2 is just like, K2 is almost like a monk, some sort of like a spiritual ascetic who doesn't want any luxury, doesn't want any possessions, doesn't want any entanglements, just wants pure truth and spirituality. So that's what K2 does. So you get a lunar eclipse with K2 involved, with K2 conjuncting the moon. It's like a big reveal. It's a big reveal, and it's also getting rid of something. So in this case, we've got this is taking place at how many degrees here? 18 degrees of Leo, sidereal. So it's going to be in Virgo, tropical. I like sidereal more. So yeah, 18 Leo. So Leo is the sign of rulers, leaders, royals, executive figures, people like that. So it's basically meaning like literally and figuratively, like heads of rulers and leaders are rolling. Aside from the Ayatollah being blown up along with the leaders of his military, you've got the Clintons getting grilled by Congress for, their Jeffrey Epstein ties. And these were people who they've had their asses kissed by the American public for a long time. They're complete total sleaze, but people fall for the spell and they're like, oh, they're lawyers who went to Georgetown. They're amazing. Oh, I want my kids to be just like them. It's like they've been getting showered with this bullshit for so long, and they're disgusting people. It's like the pictures of Bill Clinton like buddying up with Jeffrey Epstein and like in the hot tub with the young girls and arms around the young girls. It's like, yeah, we don't have to know much more. And then, and then Hillary Clinton's a foul creature. I forgot to mention this in the previous video, but, she had a big hand in bringing slavery back to Africa because she was Secretary of State when the Gaddafi regime in Libya was taken down. And, Libya was like a highly progressive modern society, had the best living standard in Africa. But he wasn't playing ball with bankers in Wall Street. So, she helped take him down. And Libya has been in a state of civil war since, 2013, for 13 years. And there are open slave markets in Libya. So you can buy slaves. Just, you go to the bazaar, to the marketplace and buy some slaves. So, yeah, she had a big hand in helping make that happen. She was part of Team Obama. Yeah. So, yeah, it's just a lot of these sleazy fucking rulers are people. I don't think they're going to jail, but people aren't going to, kiss their asses the way they used to. And that's what these people live on, is they live off of attention. And, like I said before, hate is a more potent form of worship than love. So they love it when people hate them because it literally feeds them energy, and that's not a mainstream acceptable thing that people can harvest the emotions of other people and use it to their own ends. But it's fucking true. In universities, it's like they teach you job skills and they teach political indoctrination and societal subversion. It's like they don't teach a whole lot of useful things. Just school in general is just like that. It's like why they don't teach people personal finance. So yeah, energy is a very real thing. Blind faith is the most valuable currency in the entire world. Just look at how much religion there is in this world. So, money is very secondary, possibly even tertiary in importance. It's like you want people's blind faith. You can have anything if you have that. So, another interesting thing with the placement of his lunar eclipse, it's in a lunar mansion within Leo, so a smaller constellation within Leo called Bacchus, which is a Venus-ruled constellation. So Bacchus was a Roman god of festivities, and particularly marriage festivities. And the symbol for this constellation is a bed, a marriage bed. You get married, you consummate the marriage, and then it's official. So Bacchus was all about the revelry and the partying and the intoxication and the sexuality. And Bacchus has commonalities with like Dionysus, who was the Greek god who had similar functions. So yeah, so this is the leadership. Basically, they're having their bed pleasures revealed to the world through this. So yeah, it's pretty neat. So and then let me see what's conjunct the sun here. Oh no, not a whole lot. In the same house as the sun, same sign, which is Aquarius, which is we the people. So the sun is taking the energy of Aquarius where it's sitting and shining it on this full moon. So basically the emotional consciousness of the people is going to be agitated against those in power. What's the other thing I was going to say? Yeah, and then too, you've got the retrograde Mercury in the same sign as the sun. So it's like retrograde Mercury is about you stop the flow of new information and you review the information you already have to make sense of it. So yeah, it's definitely gonna be going on here. Um, yeah, what else? Another thing too for this lunar eclipse, you've got K2 and Pluto in they're about just over 210 degrees apart. So they're in this 6-8 relationship. So you've got Pluto 6 houses. Pluto 6 houses away from K2, K2 8 houses away from Pluto. So this is called in conjunct. So when you get planets that are in conjunct, so they're not quite opposed, they're just like 30 degrees off of an opposition. When this happens, you get heightened emotion around whatever these planets are dealing with. And you're getting emotional intensity. And you're getting sort of difficulty thinking and communicating. So, it creates tension and intensity and, possible conflict. So, and Pluto's the god of the underworld who deals with extremely deep secrets. So, yeah, more of this stuff's coming up. When you're talking about Epstein files, I mean, of course, this stuff is getting curated by Central Intelligence or some such organization. But what they do is they follow a 2% rule. So they give you 98% truth and they give you 2% falsehood. But what they do, the 2% of the information that they sabotage is what is most crucial to understand the subject. So it's highly effective. So yeah, Pluto, the god of the underworld, deals with conspiracies, deep secrets, secret organizations, all that kind of stuff. Pluto is in Capricorn. Capricorn deals with regimes and authority, all that kind of stuff. Capricorn is the second house for the United States. So second house deals with resources and banking and all that kind of stuff, wealth. So, in the world since the 1400s has been run by merchants and bankers because incidentally, there was a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Gemini back then. It was like the mid 1400s. And that's when the bankers and the merchants started creating the knowledge and the media and the information. They took that role away from the church. So bankers and merchants created the Renaissance, which was a good thing. It was a pagan revival. It was a classical pagan revival. The Dark Ages, that was Christianity and Islam's baby. They never did better than they did in the Dark Ages. Christianity especially made science, art, all that stuff illegal. in Europe for centuries. So yeah, Christianity never they've missed the dark ages. They never did better, and they'll never do that well again. So yeah, so since the 1400s, the merchants and the bankers have been creating our media, our news, our knowledge. So Pluto being in, this house of banking for America, it's showing us what these bankers have been up to, what they get up to. So that's going to be part of K2's reveal with this lunar eclipse is the role of finance in all this, in my opinion. Yeah, and to have Uranus conjunct Algol again, that's decapitation of leadership. And then you've got we just had that Saturn Neptune conjunction in sidereal Pisces. It was 0 degrees Aries. Either way you look at it, there hasn't been a Saturn Neptune conjunction in these degrees in like 6,300 years. So it's basically the beginning of this era of civilization. So we're talking about Sumer, and the civilizations that grew out of that, Babylon and so on and so forth. So I think we're at the end of basically that world of 6,000 years where we're enslaved by time. That's been a big thing. The Sumerians basically got people hooked on being slave to clocks. It was Sargon was the ruler who really codified time in a way that we experience it now. So yeah, and you can say that this 6,000 years was like the Masonic era, where all of these regimes have been ruled from behind the scenes by this roughly continuous lineage within these organizations. And then Venus is conjunct Saturn, Neptune right now. So Venus is Venus can deal with protective violence. So it's like, she's like a protector goddess. She deals with art, sensuality, worldly, sensual things, sexuality, friendship, social activities, stuff like that. So it's about basically like reforming how we relate to people. So during a big, decapitation of leadership and, a birth of a new way of interacting with leadership, it's a good time to sort of reformat that too, how we socialize with one another. All right. I think that's about it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Talk to you later.